Picture this. The U.S. Congress might actually send the Philippines a warship that's been retired. And not just any warship, a cruiser. That's like your rich uncle saying, "Hey, I'm done with my Ferrari. Want the keys?" Except in this case, the Ferrari doesn't sip fuel. It guzzles it by the swimming pool and needs a crew of nearly 400 people just to keep it alive. Now the Philippines, they're eyeing this offer the way you look at an all-you-can-eat buffet. Excited? Absolutely. But deep down wondering, wait, can I actually handle this without exploding? Two American giants, once the backbone of U.S. naval power, just lowered their flags for the last time in Norfolk, Virginia. These weren't just ships. They were Cold War veterans, Gulf War warriors, and global patrol kings. For Washington, it was retirement. But for Manila, it sparked the ultimate what if. What if one of those cruisers came sailing under the Philippine flag? Take the USS Normandy, for example. This wasn't just a ship, it was a floating arsenal. 122 missile cells, Tomahawks for land strikes, anti-air missiles for the skies, rockets for the submarines lurking below, and the Aegis combat system. Basically the ship equivalent of an Xbox boss fight that nobody can beat. For decades, Normandy's mission was simple: keep America's aircraft carriers alive, no matter who tried to sink them. So why is the U.S. ready to let this powerhouse go? Simple: money. Normandy became a financial black hole. Hundreds of millions every year in upkeep, spare parts, and training. The Navy crunched the numbers and decided, hey, newer destroyers and frigates give us more bang for the buck. Normandy still had claws, but feeding the beast wasn't worth it anymore. And that's when U.S. lawmakers piped up, wait, why scrap her when allies like the Philippines are begging for more firepower? Not exactly a crazy thought. The Philippines already got those hand-me-down Hamilton-class cutters from the U.S. Coast Guard. They're old, yes, but they're still patrolling the West Philippine Sea today. So why not take things up a notch? Now imagine this: Manila suddenly wielding a cruiser. Their best frigates today carry maybe 16 missile cells. Normandy? A jaw-dropping 122. That's not an upgrade. That's like skipping from riding a bicycle straight into piloting a fighter jet. A Philippine Navy cruiser cutting through the South China Sea wouldn't just be a photo op, it'd be a geopolitical plot twist. But here's the catch. A ship like Normandy doesn't just sail, it devours. Training, fuel, spare parts, radar systems that cost more than entire towns. It's the kind of ship where every time you hit start, you also hit bankruptcy. The Philippines already sweats over maintaining its cutters. Scaling up to a cruiser is like jumping from raising goldfish to babysitting a great white shark. And yet, the symbolism can't be ignored. A Philippine-flagged cruiser would send shockwaves across Asia. Even if it sat in port more than it sailed, the message would be deafening. We're not just playing defense, we're leveling up. But here's where it gets juicy. Donating a cruiser isn't just a military question, it's pure political theater. In Washington, political theater isn't a hobby, it's the national sport. Several U.S. lawmakers are asking, why mothball billion-dollar ships when allies like Manila are desperate for muscle? To them, passing down a Ticonderoga-class cruiser is a win-win. America saves face by not turning a billion-dollar warship into scrap metal, and the Philippines gets a naval steroid injection without waiting a decade for new frigates to be built. It's like recycling, except instead of aluminum cans, you're handing over Tomahawks. But not everyone's sold. Some Pentagon officials are basically saying, guys, this isn't like gifting grandma's sofa. Sensitive radar systems, maintenance nightmares, and the terrifying prospect of Manila parking the cruiser in dry dock where it rots into rust, these are all real worries. And that's the cliffhanger. Because right now, Congress is staring down a classic dilemma. Do they play Santa Claus with hardware designed for a superpower? Or do they get practical and gift the Philippines something they can actually use without needing Wall Street to finance it? So Congress has two options on the table. Option 1, go big and hand Manila a cruiser, the naval equivalent of strapping a rocket launcher onto a moped. Option 2, keep it practical and offer something the Philippines can actually operate without pawning the nation's GDP. And that's where the destroyer card comes in. If cruisers are Ferraris with bottomless gas tanks, Arleigh Burke-class destroyers are like high-performance SUVs. Still sleek, still powerful, still armed to the teeth, but a little more manageable. Retired destroyers or even older frigates might be the smarter hand-me-down. A ship you can actually afford to use is worth 1,000 times more than a monster that spends its life chained to a pier. Meanwhile, here's the harsh truth. The Philippines is stuck in a maritime arms race it never asked for. China is pumping out warships like their iPhones. New model every year. Bigger, shinier, more advanced. The Philippine Navy, by comparison, imagine showing up to a heavyweight title fight armed with pool noodles. That's why even discussing a cruiser carries weight. It's not just about firepower, it's about signaling. The message is clear. The US isn't just here to hold your hand. We're ready to drop real muscle in your corner. And you better believe Beijing is watching. A Ticonderoga flying the Philippine flag wouldn't just tweak the tactical math. It'd be a psychological earthquake. It would scream, Manila isn't just playing defense anymore. They've got range, reach, and Uncle Sam's blessing. Even if that cruiser never fired a single missile, its very existence could deter conflict. But symbolism cuts both ways. Inside the Philippines, the reaction would split right down the middle. Some would cheer, finally we're stepping up. Others would groan, great, another expensive toy we can't afford to maintain. And honestly, both sides would be right, because every peso sunk into a cruiser is a peso not spent on smaller ships, air defenses, or surveillance drones, stuff just as critical in the West Philippine Sea chessboard. And here's the kicker. Running a cruiser doesn't just take money, it takes infrastructure. You need specialized docks, warehouses full of spare parts, crews trained for years, logistics, pipelines stretching across oceans. Without that backbone, a cruiser isn't a weapon. It's a floating Airbnb. Big, impressive, but not actually doing anything useful. That's why analysts argue, if the US really wants to gift Manila a cruiser, it better come with a support package, training, maintenance, maybe even fuel subsidies, because otherwise the Philippines would be handed a crown too heavy to wear. So what's the more likely outcome? Washington skipping the big flex and instead sending something a little more digestible. Retired Arleigh Burke destroyers, more Hamilton-class cutters, maybe even those quirky littoral combat ships everyone loves to hate. Not as jaw-dropping as a cruiser with 122 missile cells, but way more realistic for Manila to absorb, operate, and actually keep in the water. And here's the twist. Don't brush this whole cruiser debate off as wasted hot air. The fact that Congress is even discussing it tells you something. It shows Washington is rethinking the Philippines. Manila isn't just the junior partner anymore. It's being positioned as a frontline player in the great power showdown. The US knows words aren't enough. China flexes with warships. America needs to flex with hardware. Now let's play the ultimate what if. Imagine the Philippines actually does get a cruiser. Overnight, its Navy jumps into a higher weight class. The prestige alone would be historic, but it would also lock Manila into a financial and logistical burden that could either strengthen its deterrence or drain its defense budget dry. That's the razor's edge of this whole debate. So here's the real takeaway. This isn't just about one ship. It's about the future of Philippine defense strategy. Do you chase prestige, grabbing the shiny crown jewel even if it's heavy? Or do you focus on practicality, building a fleet of sustainable modern ships that might not look as glamorous, but can actually endure? And now the ball's in your court. If the US handed the Philippines a Ticonderoga-class cruiser tomorrow, should Manila take it, knowing the massive costs attached? Or is it smarter to stick with smaller modern warships that you can sail, fuel, and fight with? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear where you stand, because this debate isn't just military trivia. It's about sovereignty, survival, and how the next chapter of the West Philippines Sea Saga gets written. And if you made it this far, props to you. Hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next time we unpack a story that sounds like fiction, but is all too real. Until then, remember, in geopolitics, size definitely matters. But strategy is what wins wars.